These policy changes are toxic, driving more people into poverty and reshaping Australia as an uncaring, unjust and unfair society. Fair Go for Pensioners says no. No way.
You're watching The World from Below, and that was a clip of the Justice for the Poor rally put on by the Fair Go for Pensioners Coalition back in May 2014. We're speaking with writer and social worker Melanie Joosten and unionist and activist Anne Learmonth about the experience of ageing in Australia. And can you tell us what kind of reforms you'd like to see to address the cultural problem people seem to have with growing old?
It's a very hard question because it's a different... It isn't a problem. I mean, we all grow old. I think people are scared of it. That's one of the things. But things that do seem to work are having older people spokespeople for things. It would be nice if we had more older people in Parliament and places like that. Slightly different, but the disability coordinator, whose name I've forgotten, but who lost his job, Graham Innes. I remember him saying that he thought the best thing that could happen for disabled people who were looking for work was to require every parliamentarian to have one or two in their offices, because parliamentarians' offices see a lot of the public, and if people see older people out there doing the normal things that everybody does, which includes work, it includes being, out and about and sitting in the local cafe knitting or whatever it is, then slowly, and if politicians stop talking about older people as burdens, slowly things change. It's about, same with disabled people, with people from other cultures. If they're out there being exactly the same as you are, only slightly older or slightly less able in one way or another, then it becomes normal. And I don't think any plan or project does anything about it.
So can I ask you specifically then about one issue? In Victoria, at least, there's been recent reforms which require mandatory reporting of child abuse, even for members of the public, except in certain circumstances. But we have no such laws in relation to elder abuse. What do you think about a reform like that?
Look, it's a difficult one, and I haven't really thought about it very much. But it risks almost taking something away from older people as well. I can see the advantages in extreme cases of abuse. There are organisations out there that can provide help and support, but often people don't know about them and go to them, or leave it very late to go to them, or they don't because, as you said before, older people don't want to cause trouble, particularly within their family. But it sort of infantilises older people in a way which I think is counterproductive and very irritating. It's different from children, because children don't have the life experience and the knowledge and the skill to need to be treated in that way, checked up on and told up on. If you're doing it out of friendship, it's fine, but if you're doing it for other reasons, it's not fine, I don't think.
Well, recently the Victorian Government has referred the issue of euthanasia and assisted dying to a parliamentary committee for consideration, which is the first time we've seen some potential political interest in reform in this field. Melanie, what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, in all of the interviews that I've done with older people, we often talk about end-of-life choices and euthanasia, and it's something that a lot of people would like to see more choice available. And I think if you look at the very high rate of suicide amongst older men in particular, men over 80, there's quite a high rate in proportion to younger men. And I think that points to that there might be some issues around the choices people have at the end of their life. But there are some difficulties to do with this feeling of being a burden and whether people would be making these choices free of the pressure from society. But I think at the end of the day, the important thing is that these discussions are led by people in their 70s, 80s and 90s and not by politicians in their 40s and 50s, because they've got completely different life experience and views on the topic.
And can you tell me, do you have views on assisted dying?
Yeah, I do, and it relates a bit to what we were talking about before, and that's the lack of control that many older people feel as they get older. They're excluded from being considered over all sorts of things. Things happen to them rather than they make them happen. And I think, and I've talked to some friends of mine about this, and I know that they've made preparations. They don't think that they may ever use them, but they want to know that they can if they want to. So I think that that's really important. It's not that we're all rushing off to commit suicide. It's having a sense of agency, as back to where we started. I think. How about you, Melanie?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's about having that choice and being able to have that control and not just being at the mercy of others.
In the short time that we've got left, Anne, can you tell us a little bit about yarn bombing?
Yarn bombing is transforming trees, pillars, other inanimate objects by knitting what a local councillor called tree cozies, knitting or crocheting them. It's used often as a form of protest. People knit messages, make pink knitted machine guns, do all sorts of things. The group I belong to is not quite as daring as that, but we love knitting. We love the surprise that people get when a place that they pass regularly and is green and leafy and treed suddenly becomes wildly comfortable, wildly colourful, not comfortable.
And comfortable, really.
Like the trees in the city square that we do every year by agreement with the council. And it's just fun to do. Some people do little small things that they just leave in odd spaces so that you give people a sense of delight, I think, often, when they see something that they expect to be one way and all of a sudden it's another way. Doesn't hurt the trees, probably doesn't do them any great good, but it certainly doesn't hurt them. And things come and go, and I reuse all my pieces. I used them again at a festival in a park in Heidelberg near where I live. We're planning to use some as part of a series of activities on World Refugee Day, which is coming up later on in June. And it's just a nice way. And it's also a group activity so that you get together and you talk and you have fun and knit.
And unfortunately, that's all we have time for on this week's episode of The World from Below. I'd like to thank our guests, Melanie Joosten and Anne Learmonth. I would also like to thank all our crew and producers and our host, RMI TV. You've been watching The World from Below. Thanks for joining us.